Hi everybody, my name is Bill Cope. I'm going to show you through CyberScholar, a new piece of software we've been developing. People probably know we've been working on the Scholar platform for a long, long time, but when AI came along, we decided to more or less start again. We had to start from scratch. So this is what we've been building. Cyber, what's that word mean? We actually don't like the idea of artificial intelligence in this sense. This is not about machines that can replicate human intelligence. Cyber is the idea of feedback, which is relationships between humans and machines, where the machines are unbelievably powerful, but in very, very different ways from humans. And how do we build those into a synergistic relationship? I'm going to try and show you that in the software I'm about to develop with you. Oh, to show with you, I'm sorry. So anyhow, let's start here with a real piece of work. Now, this what's the heart of CyberScholar is a thing that we call a work editor. It's not really a document because you can put videos in here and it can be, multimodal in all sorts of ways. It's a work. It's something where you're representing your knowledge, for example. And we've used this in a lot of different settings. We've used it in high schools for all sorts of pieces of writing in various subject areas. We're using it for to train medical people to write patient notes. We're using it in a context where police trainees are learning how to write police reports, which are incredibly important because that's what the case will ultimately depend on, the report that goes to the prosecutor into the court. So anyhow, what we've got on the left is any of these kinds of knowledge representation spaces where what we're doing is not asking somebody, question 4, the answer's B. Oh no, it's not C, you got it wrong. We're not asking select response answer. Our conventional ways of understanding what happens in learning are pretty basic and pretty poor, to be quite frank. That's one of our arguments. So getting students to produce these knowledge representations is really important at all levels. And by the way, this platform is designed for anywhere from grade 4 to any forms of professional learning. And we're using it here with our doctoral students. I'm going to show you this example, which is produced by one of our doctoral students. So I'm scrolling backwards and forwards through it here. But this is a student who, we teach about AI, we teach about technology mediated learning. That's what my job as a professor is. Here we are. This particular piece of work by one of our students, one of our doctoral students, is about utilizing station rotation and generative AI in tailored learning in the middle school. Okay, so what she's doing is got the classroom with stations all around the room. Station rotation is quite an old idea, but now as the students go from station to station, there's generative AI, which is going to support their work and their thinking. And she's written what might be considered to be a conventional academic essay, right? So there's an introduction, theoretical concepts, what is station rotation, what's generative AI, differentiated adaptive learning. I'm scrolling through it rather quickly just to give you a sense of this is a big bit of work. It's thousands of words. Active learning, differentiated instruction, station rotation in the middle school, AI in the classroom. There are videos in here. This is multimodal. There's Sal Khan talking about AI, critics and limitations. What are the problems in this kind of environment? And then we come to some conclusions and there's some references. So this is a substantial piece of work. Now, to move on now to the two fundamental functions in this CyberScholar space. There is a helper function, which is while you write, and there's a review function once you have a creditable draft. Okay, so the helper function is kind of micro things, help me think this through, help me write the work. And the review function is, okay, give me global feedback on my ideas. So let me take you first into the helper function. So firstly, what we've got is we have a floating toolbar here, which has regular kind of editorial things, structural things you can do with the text. There's the floating toolbar. But up here, we have a thing which is Cyber Helper. And in fact, when I pull up Cyber Helper anywhere, these are some things that I'm given to help me write the work. I can brainstorm, help me with ideas. I can research, which is okay. Let's go into the knowledge base that we have. Let's go into, and by the way, I'm going to talk about the knowledge base later. That's created by the instructor. I'm sorry. Let's go wherever we're into the LLM, into the word, into the web, let's kind of research this idea. Let's plan our thinking. Let's perhaps expand something. I've written a little bit here. Could you help elaborate on that idea? Summarize is, okay, I've just written too much. How can I contract that a little bit on this particular idea? I've written too much. Translate is any language you want to point a stick at. Check flow, which is what's the logic we've got here? Is it running nicely? Advise, which is get some suggestions and advice about about the way in which I'm tackling this problem. Proofread, which is just fix up my language, which is one of these kind of essential but mechanical things which the machine can help you with very, very nicely. And then ask is a generalized kind of question. So just to show you what happens is when I press something like ask, that's just chat with chat with the knowledge base and chat with the foundation model about the problem. You can see over here what that happens is it brings up a dialog box on the right, and you can talk to the AI. So, but anyhow, just one thing to say about all of that is that as we do these things, I might be asking, look, just simply brainstorm learning analytics for me. Or I might be selecting my whole work and saying, help me think through the flow. Or maybe this critical, this section, I might select this. So in other words, those functions I just showed you can be about a word. It can be about the whole work, proofread the whole work for me, or it can be about any section you've highlighted. So this is a kind of an AI helper that's with us all the time. But let me say the most important thing about this. We have a problem in education, which is colloquially called cheating, which we used to solve with plagiarism detectors, but we can't solve it with AI. Now, in fact, cheating is a kind of a lazy, easy way of defining the problem. The real problem is in the AI world is what is being increasingly called cognitive offloading, which is this darn stuff can do the work for you. It could produce a creditable essay here with a prompt. We don't want to do that. We want to have AI that doesn't reduce your thinking. We want to have AI that expands your thinking, which pushes you further, which we believe we do in this environment. But the only way we can do that is by tracking what you're doing with contextual AI. And that includes keystrokes, it includes click streams, it includes timestamps. So we can know not only how much work you did relative to the AI, but we can know the nature of your use of the AI, productive or unproductive, right? And what we're doing is we're tracking that via our analytics all the time. So anyhow, that's a quick overview of the cyber helper function. Now I'm going to go on and we're going to look at the review function, which is really moving the discussion from details into the realm of big ideas. Now, what I'm going to do now is I am going to pull that out of the way a little bit so we can look more at this side of the screen. Because what I'm going to do is I am going to create an AI review of that particular work. Now, I might be I'd be the student, but in this case, but now I'm the instructor, and I'm showing you what the student could do and would do. So firstly, what they do is they select a rubric, and we're actually calling these AI agents. That's actually what they are. You can see here we've got essays for schools, we've got medical rubrics, we've got extended, we've got writing police reports, we've got, but this, I'm going to choose this particular rubric here. And by the way, there's a rubric maker in this system where any teacher can build these AI agents, which are going to be actively engaging with the student's work. Okay, I've chosen this one here, which is what I'd call ways of, this is a kind of a generalized rubric about doing academic research at a higher education level. I'll show you a bit more of this in a second. But then what I'm going to do is I am going to choose a model, right? So this system is not tethered to any particular AI model. And what's interesting is the models talk in subtly different ways and come up with different answers. That's interesting in itself. And perhaps perhaps the instructor might tell the student which model they're to use, but perhaps the student might themselves muck around with different models and see the kind of responses they get. And the models we have in there include the OpenAI models, DeepSeek, the Chinese one, Grok, which is Elon Musk, Qwen, which is Alibaba, another DeepSeek model, Anthropic, Claude, Gemini, Mistral, which is the French one, Google, Gemini 2.5, and some of the newer Grok and OpenAI models. When a new model comes in, we keep putting it in there. For argument's sake, I'm going to choose that particular one there, one of the GPT models. Then what we have is a knowledge base. Now, let me explain this to you. This knowledge base, in our particular case, is everything our students have written in our doctoral and master's program for the last 5 years, and everything we as professors have written in that program, the instructors in the program. 35 million tokens, 32 million words. It's a big database, but honestly, what our students know about, they're teachers and, they're people doing their master's and doctoral degrees. They're really smart people. And what they know is better than what any LLM could by itself know. Incredible kind of resource around innovative pedagogy and new technologies and so on. And I can choose here the range of what's going to be looked at in the analysis. So let me go close. So we've got our things set up, and now what we're going to do is we're going to start generating the review. And very important thing is we create a new version. We increment the work, because if you're getting AI feedback on that work, we want to analyze the way in which that feedback assisted you in the rewrite. We want to see how much it's pushed your thinking in one way or another. So I'm going to create a new version and start a review. So it's spinning away here. Now let me say a little bit more about these AI agents. In this case, we have 10 agents, what they do is they're kind of, if you like, different kinds of persona, intellectual persona, which are looking at that work of the student in different kinds of ways. Like, look, how have they counted? Why are they doing this? What's their previous experience? What do they bring to the task? What kinds of new evidence turns up in terms of things that they notice happening there from a research and observational point of view? What kind of empirical things are happening in that classroom, which then might extend that previous experience? What kind of concepts are they using? This is full of all sorts of new concepts, differentiated instruction, adaptive learning. These are concepts which are central to our field now. And how do they put them together in theory? Then what kind of logic do they use? How does the argument flow? Are they building a cohesive argument about this? All right, okay, we've got our kind of theory together. How does this stuff then apply? How have they then turned it into practice in this particular classroom? And to what extent is their work innovative? How well have they communicated their knowledge? And of course, referencing, it's really important that there are strong citations all the way through, and that what the students done is link their current thinking to new thinking. Now, as I say, this is just the rubric that we've built. The rubric consists of these 10 AI agents. This is just the one that we've built. However, any teacher can build a rubric of any kind, but also we're building a bank of these rubrics, which people might just pull off the shelf if they don't want to build one for themselves. So it's working through it again now. And one of the first things that I want to show you is, it's nearly at the end. Well, first let me say, this is, by the way, 10 AI agents going through 3, 4, 5,000 words 10 times, looking at a knowledge base with 32 million words in it, and then, as necessary, going back into the foundational LLM to give feedback. So let me just say something about this, is when I open all of these, what we've done for these AI agents is we've given very explicit description about what the work the agent, the work the agent has to do, experiencing the known, which is description of prior experience, limitations of perspective that come with that experience. Okay, that's the first one. The next one is, and I'm just opening them up before we look at the AI feedback, empirical evidence, verifiable sources, relevance. Okay, how well have they dealt with empirical matter? So what we've done for each of these agents is we've pretty kind of explicit descriptions of what they're to do, relevance and concepts, definitions, and so on. So this is one of the things where we've got this rubric making tool, and any instructor, but by the way, the instructor's job now changes. They've got to be building AI agents and not just teaching in the way they conventionally did. But by the way, we can give people off-the-shelf versions of this in this environment as well, as you saw. Okay, now let's look at the feedback. Firstly, the feedback is voluminous, and The rating, by the way, there was a four-level rubric that the four-level rubric that was put in there. So there's four levels, and you get star ratings. And you can see this one, the AI thinks they've done pretty well and gives a quite voluminous description. In conclusion, the writer thoroughly explains their interest, motivation, and experience, and effectively, okay, you've done well there. Next thing is the AI assistant says strengths and empirical evidence. What's really, really interesting though is from our knowledge base, there are very specific citations of things they should look at. So in other words, what we're doing is, all the problems around hallucination are not eliminated, but they're much mitigated by this kind of approach. Suggestions for further strengthening. This is really important. While the text is already highly detailed, it could benefit from the inclusion of specific quantitative data and statistical outcomes from studies, improvement of successful, And look, I'm reading it very quickly. A direct observation on teacher-related outcomes at author's own classroom could serve as a valuable primary evidence. That's a great piece of advice. Let me go down to the next one, which is here about concepts. Now, the concept I consistently use as strength areas of improvement. While the paper uses many strong concepts, some definitions will be more concise and more formalized. For example, is generative The paper mentions several tools, but only descriptively, and some conceptual overlaps are not fully clarified. Here it says, what's the connection between station rotation and personalization? That's a difficult question, by the way, because there's more than one kid at the station sometimes. So what I'm going to do down here is I am going to say, look, exactly what on earth does personalization mean? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put in the thing, please explain personalization. Because look, what do you mean by that in this particular context? So I can actually talk to the AI and I ask it questions, right? So I'm going to do that now. And the AI is thinking about it. Now, what we've done here is we say, look, this is really not AI. This is the collective knowledge that we put into the knowledge base, which in our case is our students and ourselves. And it's also what I as an instructor have constructed as the AI agents. And here it is, look, a very, very, very good description of personalization. A really, really an excellent description. And look, let me say here, what I might want to do is I might not be a good speaker of English. This is a pretty technical response. And I'm going to put in there that I am a speaker of ODIA. I put that in because we've been doing some research in Odisha State around LLMs and small languages. And ODIA is the language of a language of Eastern India. Now, what it's doing now, which is really, really interesting, it's not translating its previous response. It's building a new response in ODIA. And the ODIA speaker tells me this is a pretty darn good response as to what personalized learning is. But then what I can do is with any of these things here, look here, these are voluminous kinds of responses. I can say something, okay, look, you've just dumped a whole pile of words on me. Please summarize this for me in 30 words. And then I can start thinking about the 30 words. Then I'll go back and look at the long version. And there I am there. So, that's a summary on that criterion. So look, let me summarize. This is giving more feedback and better feedback than I could ever give as a professor. So I'm talking about at the higher education level. I'm talking about PhD students. Well, if that's the case, it changes education all the way through. So as I say, our bottom threshold for this is about grade 4, which is the point at which students are capable of making meaningful knowledge representations. We call this complex epistemic performance, which is kind of a technical thing, rather than the answer C to question 3, which is just memory, essentially. It's not much more than memory anyhow. So anyhow, that's what we've been doing. A small comment about IP and things corporate. I work for the University of Illinois. This is a joint production between Common Ground, which is an enterprise we have based in the research park of the university. It's a not-for-profit. So that's kind of in terms of the IP behind this. And also, this is not a very kind world out there, unfortunately. We would love for this to be open, but we don't kind of live in a world where that's realistic, we think. So we actually have a patent pending on the on this technology. There are kind of a number of different aspects of this technology which are kind of key. The central core is, and it's a technical argument to explain how this happens, is this is a peculiar mix of contextual AI and generative AI, which is able to produce these results. Okay, folks, hope that was interesting. Sorry, I thought this was going to be quick, but it never is. So thanks very much for listening.